So if I can give one piece of advice is to just ask, just just be open about it. I mean, in the end, everything that you say is wrong, right? When you're talking about grief, like you never really get it right, but at least you're trying. And if grieving people see that there is someone that is really trying hard to be there, um, even if it's hard to open up when you're in so much pain.
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives, in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I have the honor of chatting with Olivia Yannicheri. Olivia is all the way in Germany. This is my first European conversation, Olivia. I'm so excited. We had to figure out the time zone difference here on this one. Welcome
Yes,
to the podcast, Olivia.
thank you, Kendra. Thank you for
I'm
having me.
I'm grateful that you're here. And how I found out about you was on Instagram of following one of the other guests I've had on the podcast, Patricia. I saw you come up in her one of her interviews that she does live on her Instagram account.
Hmm.
And that's one of the ways that I found out. And I had already been following the Big Grief, which is that correct? The Big Grief is what
Yeah,
your
correct.
Instagram
Yeah.
account is called. And so anyway, I'm like, oh, I would love to have you on if you want to share your journey, your grief journey here. So let's find out a little bit about you. So let's do a little quick Q&A kind of here. So you live
Yeah.
in what part of Germany?
I live in Munich, so it's the south of Germany.
Okay, and you've lived there all your life. You were born and raised in Munich.
No, so actually I was born in Rome, so I'm a native Italian.
Okay.
And I was raised and I lived there for 18 years until I decided that I wanted to study or do something with my life. So I
Hmm.
moved to Germany because my mom was from Austria and I learned German thanks to her. So that was one of the reasons why I decided to move to Munich, also because it's a very nice city. So I decided to study here and then I found a job and I decided to stay.
So your upbringing was in Rome. So really,
Yeah,
it was just only now as in your furthering of your studies that you went to Munich.
yeah, correct.
Okay, okay. So are you so you're when you left Italy, did you um your parents were still living then in Italy when you moved?
Yeah, yeah. They
Okay.
were actually my whole family lives in Rome.
Okay, so everybody was there. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Now, what do you do then? Now, have you've already gone to school? Now, what do you do for work? We were going to talk about this right before we started recording, and I'm like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
hold on. Let's record first. I want to,
Yeah.
because
So,
a lot of times guests
yeah.
don't know that some people don't that are listening sometimes don't know that I'm just meeting the guests really for the first time. We said as I'm talking on the
Yeah.
podcast, so so I'm learning about you with the audience. So yeah,
Yeah.
what do you work? What do you work?
So I actually study and I work. I do both.
Hmm.
I did my undergrad in American Studies at the university here in Munich, but I work as a project manager at a big company that sells brakes and systems for trains. Um,
Okay.
on a worldwide scale. Um, but I decided to go back to school after my parents died. So this is my first semester of my graduate program in American society and culture.
Okay. And then that is exactly what we're going to talk about today is the your grief journey after the death of your parents. Are you
Yeah.
the only child? Are you an only child or do you have other siblings?
I have an older brother. He lives in Rome. But so yeah, I'm not alone.
You have him. Okay, so tell us, what were the circumstances of your parents passing? And was it at the same time or
Well, I always begin with telling my mom's story because
okay.
she's been sick since I was, I guess, 15 roughly. And she had breast cancer. And so the very first memories that I have with cancer are connected to my mom. So that's why I tell her story first. I
Mhm.
remember that she has always been through a lot of therapy and chemo stuff that I would not understand just because I was too young and was, yeah, just had a hard time even dealing with that. But that's really all I remember, her losing her hair, or just dealing with some nausea and, yeah, just the side effect of cancer treatment. So yeah, she was sick since I was a little teenager, but then she went into remission, I guess, when I was 19 or something like this. And it really got worse, and that was the first time that I actually started to understand what it means to have cancer and to have a parent that might die because of it.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so eventually, and when I was still studying in Munich, she her health started to decline. So I needed to travel back and forth between Germany and Italy to be able to be there.
And
Of
what is
course, I
that time?
wanted
What's the time? Would you go by
when
train? Would you go by train, by land, or by
oh
airplane? And what was
I yeah I it was 2017. So what is it? 4 years ago, four or
Mhm.
5 years ago. But I would just travel by everything that I could find. So
Mhm.
planes or by coach or I drove back to Rome once or
What's
twice
the
because
what's the distance? What's the distance driving?
it's 10 hours driving,
Yeah.
so it's a lot.
Yeah.
But
And you were in
I did,
college at that time,
I was,
you were in
yeah,
college, and here you are going back and forth while she was going through her second round, basically, and not second round or battle with cancer, like
cancer.
when it came
Yeah.
back. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, I was also working because I needed to just afford my living,
Hmm.
which was extra hard on me because I needed to be here and have my life, but also I wanted to be in Rome to be next to my mom. So it was a really not just emotionally tough time, but also just on my own, um, yeah, strength generally. I wasn't really able to explore because I was in my 20s. So, normally young teenagers or 20 years
Yeah,
old
yeah.
people
Hmm.
just start to find out who they are in their 20s. And uh but I didn't have that, so I really, I don't miss it, but it was hard on me because I just thought that my life would be different. So
Hmm.
um still I decided that I wanted to be there, so I traveled, as I said before, back and forth. um and but I'm still very grateful that I was able to do that.
The what you were saying of the aspect of grieving, also to some extent a little bit, the fact that you were missing out, quote unquote, on what the life of a 20 something year old would be. um
Mm,
but at the same time knowing that your priority was being with your mom, right? So it's like
yeah,
you missed a chunk of maybe the experiences that some of the 20-year-olds would be having around you, but at the same time I'm sure you gained a lot of maturity and responsibility and all these other virtues that you gained along the way because you were confronted with a situation that was not something you should be dealing with at 20 when you're just
yeah,
starting college.
yeah.
Oh, oy. So how long was her second then around it. So 2017 is when you were saying that you're doing this traveling. How long was
Yeah,
and when it came back, did it come back again in as breast cancer, or did it come already stage
yeah.
4 as a different way, as a
Mhm.
in a different form of cancer at that
Mhm.
time?
Yeah. So I I don't really remember the exact
Mm-hmm.
date, but I think it came back, as I said, when I was 18, 19, and then
Mm-hmm.
it gradually started getting worse. So what I remember is a call that I got from my stepdad saying that she had a seizure, and while they were hiking, and a helicopter had to take her to the next hospital, and that they found out through screenings that it was it just basically spread all over, so we had
Yeah.
to get ready for that, and that was 2016. So it wasn't just like you get that um, information from your doctors that you have a terminal illness, and then you have like 2 weeks to go. It was really, in my case, what was it, like a year? It was a
Mm.
gradual process of dying.
And anything that is too hard to share, you don't have to necessarily either. You
Hmm.
don't have to go into it's still very um recent, and this space is completely for you as well as for the listeners, Olivia. So feel free to either not share so much or share and use it as a way of having the emotions of grief come out. However, you want to use the
Mm.
space, feel free to do so. It can be hard to kind of backtrack into all the details. So we don't necessarily have to, go into too many details.
Yeah, thank you. But I still feel that I struggled with it a lot, of course, because of all the pictures in my head, and just the trauma of losing a parent.
Absolutely.
But and as hard as it is, I still think that talking about it helps me a lot. So I'm very thankful every time that I get the chance to do so and share something about my mom. So thank you.
Okay, good, because that's how I feel too. It's so funny that you say that because it's the same how I feel like when I talk. And a lot of times people that are around us don't necessarily know, and they feel like if they bring up the conversation, it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't ask her how her sister died, or
Mm.
maybe I shouldn't ask her how her mom died, because if I do, then what if her emotions come out? Like maybe, but at the same time, it's like we are like sometimes like just wanting so badly to keep their memory
Mm.
alive and share about them, and to not have those opportunities in which people ask us about them feels like we are not serving them, serving them or keep,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
So yeah, good. I'm glad that it's serving you to be able to share her story and your story, of course, here too.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what year? So then 2017 was, so 2016 was when it came back. So did she pass away then
Mm.
in 2017?
Yeah. 15th of July. Yeah.
To 15th of July of
Mm.
2017?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did you find out? Were you in Munich at that moment, or were you already back again in Rome during that time when she
I
passed?
was there actually when she passed.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to my boss at work, and I graduated in May of that year. So I was done with uni work at least, and I had a little bit more time to focus on my mom. And my boss gave me the opportunity to work my hours ahead so that I was able to um, say like work 15 hours a day, and then have 10 days straight off from work, that I would use to go back home and be there for my mom. So um, that's how I was able to be there. And I remember my brother was, I think he was working somewhere, and he caught the last plane because of course, he knew that it was going to happen, but his plane had a delay or something, so he didn't make it in time to
Mm.
um, see my mom. And I still remember that very, very vividly.
Do you feel like it was did he feel like he was missing out on not being able to be there in that moment that she transitioned?
Yeah, sure. I
Mhm.
mean, my brother always struggled to, uh, yeah, just be there in general. He really didn't want to see my mom suffering like that, so he would always find a way to leave our apartment because that's where we were taking care of my mom.
Mhm.
Um, but I still think that the last moment is very crucial to you as a person, as a surviving person, to get some a way to say goodbye. And I really felt that when my brother came home, he opened the door and saw my mom and started crying. And the only thing that he said was, "At least now I know that it's over, that she's not suffering."
Mm.
But it was still very hard on him that he was not able to just tell her how much he loved her, maybe.
Mhm. And for you being that was your dad then there as was your dad there or
No.
no, okay. So we'll jump. Okay, hold on. We'll put pause on that
It, yeah,
chapter there.
I think I just have to explain briefly that my parents were divorced. So,
Okay. Okay.
um, and they did so when I was 3. So my mom had another partner, and so did my dad.
Okay.
And yeah, and my dad knew that my mom was going to die, so he visited her several times, but it was still very hard on him as well.
Okay. So thank you for clarifying. Yeah. Okay. So then they were each, or yeah, they were not, he was not in that particular dynamic. Now,
Mm.
curious then, how was the support then that you received at that? So when your mom passed away from your dad, being that it was not his current, he was grieving her differently, right? Than you guys as
Mm-hmm.
kids. Did you feel still that support from him in that moment emotionally?
Mm, not really,
Okay.
to be honest, because
Yeah. No, no, no.
um,
It's that. No, that's that. Absolutely. I'm just always curious with those kind of
yeah,
dynamics because it's like how,
mm-hmm.
even though this had been his wife, um, it had been a long time since they'd been separated,
Yeah.
right? So divorced. So it does make a difference on how somebody else grieves, and then that dynamic. So it was only really you and your brother that were sharing that similar experience in that moment.
Yeah, and also I have to say that I always thought when somebody dies, then the family gets together, or there's still something that because you've lost a person, you just care for each other more. At least that's what I thought. But I learned that everybody has a different way of grieving. Not everybody wants to talk about it as I do, for example. So there were times where I really felt that grief was just tearing our family apart instead of bringing us together.
So you were even grieving to some extent in this process the way in which you all grieved to some extent because it was
Yeah.
different than the idea.
Yeah.
It was different than the idea that you had even made in your mind of what was even going to happen. Was it that the fact that you and your brother had shared a common experience, that maybe any of your grandparents, were your mom's any of her parents or siblings alive still in that moment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My grandma was there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so like your grandma, everybody, right? So you're like thinking, wow, like we're all gonna be there supporting each other and this bond and this common, yet not
Hmm.
necessarily was it that way because of the different ways in which you all grieved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that part of the reason that you created that space on Instagram to share about it, was to have that commonality with somebody, with others, to be able to express your grief?
Maybe partly, but I actually opened my Instagram account after my dad died,
Okay. So
and
let's
I've
go into that. Let's go into that
mhm,
circumstances a little bit too. But yeah, so you opened it
yeah,
after, and what was that? When was that?
that was in June 2019, so 2 years later after my mom died.
And what were the circumstances of his death?
Well, my dad was diagnosed with brain tumor the same year that my mom died. She died in July, of 2017, and my dad was diagnosed in October. And so, and at first I didn't know, and my dad didn't want to tell me, and he, um, yeah, I don't know how he did it, but he succeeded in not letting me know that he was sick. He actually knew it, I would think, already when my mom died, that there was something wrong with him because he was having um, some light seizures during
Mm.
the day, and he wasn't able to. He didn't know what was going on, but he just felt that there must be something wrong. So, and I later discovered that he went to do a checkup to at the hospital, and then that they told him that he had a brain tumor, and it was actually the stage 4, or one of the most aggressive ones. So yeah, I found out when they had to how do you say that in English, to where he had to undergo surgery because
Right.
of because of that.
By the way, the
Yeah.
fact your English is flawless. The fact that you speak German, Italian, English, and what else? Do you speak more? Like, are you?
I yeah, I speak Spanish and French.
Ay, hablas español
So,
también y francés.
oh
Increíble.
no,
No,
that's
no, no, no,
great.
no. Increíble,
but
increíble.
but you're Italian as well, right?
I'm Italian background. My grandfather was
Okay.
Italian, so I don't
Oh, okay.
speak. No, no parlo italiano.
Okay.
Non parlo. Non? Would it be non parlo? Non
None.
or
Yeah.
no? Non. Non
None.
parlo
Yeah.
italiano. Um, yeah, no, my grandfather never spoke Italian to my dad.
Oh. No.
Yeah, it was
Mm,
that type of generation in which when, yeah, they were here in the States, it was the assimilating to uh
mm,
trying to fit into the culture. Yeah, and my grandmother was American. So, but I
yeah.
was born and raised in Colombia. My mom is Colombian. My mom was
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So yeah, Spanish is my first language. And English is well,
Cool.
they both technically are both would be my first. English would be because my that was what my dad would speak to us, and Spanish would. So you
Mm,
know a lot of languages. That's amazing.
yeah.
So if you ever can't think of a word in English, tell it to me in Spanish, and then we'll get it in English. I do not speak
Okay.
German. I only know eins,
Yeah.
zwei, drei. I did go to a Waldorf school when I was
Oh,
little.
no way.
So yeah, Waldorf method school. So the some of the songs I had, like my class, you read. Did you ever do Waldorf school, or do you
Yeah.
know of
Yeah.
Waldorf? Okay,
Yeah.
so Eurythmia, I had my class of Eurythmia. I think that's what it's called, my class, and I
Mhm.
knew like eins, zwei, drei, and that's about it.
That's crazy.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So sorry, listeners, you're having to hear all our little my side conversations. But that's the thing with this podcast is more than just talking about the grief.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
other things that also we have in common in life. Okay. So then so when he had his his procedure, then that's when you found out
Mm,
that it was already the stage 4.
yeah.
um and that was still within that same year of your mom's passing, that he had his first procedure after his
Yeah.
diagnosis. Okay.
Yeah.
And so his illness then was 2 years then of him dealing with this tumor, right?
Mm, yeah.
So then did you do again the back and forth at that point as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah.
So the total in your process of living in Munich and going to Germany and going to Rome in this process from your mom to, was a total like about 3 years of you going back
Yeah.
and forth between the two countries.
Mhm.
Um, Okay, so tell us about that dynamic a little bit, and then we'll go into how you even here you are wrapping your head about grieving your mom's loss, and then and would you like to say what word do you like to say? By the way, I know you've said your when your dad died. Are you comfortable with the word death, or you prefer
Yeah,
passing?
sure.
Okay,
Sure.
okay.
I just whatever works for you.
No, in whatever way. I just want to
Yeah.
respect whatever works for you, because sometimes
Yeah,
I always
thank
try
you.
to ask that to the guest, because some words are, you know,
Mm.
triggers. I like when I was present for my mom's passing, like we call it like transition. Like it literally like we could know she had transitioned. Like it was
Yeah.
like such a, and I don't know if that was your experience. It was such a clear um
Passing.
reality and
Yeah.
understanding of the reality of who we are or what we are that is more than the body, because it was
Mm.
very clear in that moment when she died that she was no longer there.
Yeah.
It's so that her soul, like it was like in my beliefs at least, like we knew that her soul had transitioned, like we knew the
Mm.
soul had no relation to the body in that moment. I'm not sure if that was your situation being there in your mom's when your mom passed away, when your mom died. Did you feel that way, like a very clear distinction
Yeah.
of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I it's it's even weird to me because I before then I just knew dying from the movies, and you just
Hmm.
see that it happens and it's just all at once. It's 1 second and then you're gone. But in my mom's case, I just saw that it's a process. It's not just
Hmm.
you turn off the switch and then that's it. But um, there's a whole process that your body and maybe your soul as well go through while
Hmm.
or to get to that point that you can leave. And that was really something new to me, and also something that really traumatized me, to see
Hmm.
all those changes,
Stages. Yeah.
yeah, those stages and what cancer does to you, because that's something very unique about dying of cancer. Um, so so I had to get used to it. But
Yeah.
when my dad got very sick as well, I already knew what those stages were.
Hmm.
So I was able to understand better, at least, what was going on.
You say something that is so true. It's just because of the how it is, the type of illness, because my mom also died of cancer. So it
Mm,
is very probably different than, of course, a sudden death or any other thing. You are seeing the deterioration of the organs as they start kind of shutting down and just that process of it. So it is definitely very different. So,
mm,
than maybe something else, right? So I've only witnessed, the death of, right in front of me of cancer, nothing else. So I do not have any point of comparison of any other type of it. So, and I guess in your case too, you have your mom's passing, which was of cancer, and then your dad too. So it was,
yeah.
similar. So, what were in that moment? Let's talk about a little bit, and then we'll kind of we'll go into your dad's passing. In the moment of your mom's passing, what were some of your mom's death? What were some of the belief systems you had or tools? You mentioned, of course, experiencing that trauma. Um, what were some of the things that really kept you going and just you know, moving one step at a time and forward in your
Mm,
life carrying this heavy grief?
I don't think I had any. I
Mm,
I just that was my first rawest experience with such a death. So
mhm,
I was really there trying to grapple what was going on, just not just for myself, but what was going on within my family as well. And there's just as grievers know, it's not just about yourself, but grief changes everything basically around you. So what I did was I relied on my dad because I thought he's the next one that I'm the closest to. So I'm going to ask him what I should do, or to yeah, just get some advice on um, how to live on, right?
mm,
So my dad said that it might be better for me if I would just go back to Munich and go back to work. Just get it off your mind. Just be with other people. Go out. Try to like not think about it. So I did. I went back to work, and I did so for 6 months. I um, just immersed myself into my job, but I just couldn't do it. It didn't work for me. It worked for some people, but I was really exhausted. I felt such an exhaustion that is not it out is really out of this world. Um, and I started crying. I cried all the time. I had a lot of physical symptoms as well, so nausea, wasn't able to sleep, all of that. And but I wasn't able to say what was going on. I didn't even know that there was a term that would
Mm.
describe it. Like what is grief? It's hard to describe it in one word,
Yeah.
right? So I really struggle with that because
Mm.
I think in my culture we always have a name for something. We have a name for cancer. We have a name for everything, basically all the feelings, but not for what really grief means to you
Mm.
personally. So what I decided then was to go to therapy because I just thought this how I feel right now is going to make me go insane. Like I really thought I was going to lose my mind because of it was it was just such a physical pain, not only physical but also of course I was grieving, so my soul was hurting, and I lost the ability to look at life, look at how life could go on for me. So yeah, that's when I realized I really need help.
That is that is very wise, especially at your age. Because how old were you at that time? You were young still.
Yeah, when my mom died, I was 23, and my
Ooh.
dad, yeah, when my dad passed away, was I 25? Yeah,
So here at 23 then, with was it within that same year that you decided to go to therapy? When your
yeah.
mom is in that same year? Okay, so that's amazing that you did, and the fact that you knew you needed help, that is huge and very mature of you to do that, because a lot of times too, people have such a stigma. I don't know how it is in Germany or in Europe.
Mm,
Sometimes there's stigma around uh therapy or things like that, going to a psychiatrist. In the US, it's not as much. I know in my culture in Colombia, there was more of that stigma. What is it there? Like, how is the
it,
stigma there about seeking for that type of help?
it's the same.
Mm.
Yeah. I remember my dad himself kept asking, what's wrong with me? Why am I still not feeling like I felt before? Or he would just say, yeah, you have to keep going. Just keep going. What's wrong? Just
Mm.
yeah. And that was really it was hard for me because I needed some validation, or at least I needed to feel that I was not crazy, that it was just normal to feel that way. And I didn't have that. So I think I decided to seek therapy because I wanted to have that. I wanted to talk about it to someone and hear the words, it's okay and it's normal. You're normal. You're not insane. You're not going, or maybe you are going to lose your mind, but it's all okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is so important what you just said. And I'm sure you didn't have any peers around you that had experienced something like this. Did you have any friends
Mm,
at all? Because you're so young. Had any of your friends experienced any type of death or trauma in their lives at that point?
no, no.
No.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
very
Mm,
isolating. Yeah, very
mm, mm.
isolating. So tell us then. So you started to go to therapy, and then what shifted then for you then? And you went through therapy throughout the time your dad was sick
Mhm.
as well. Okay, so tell us a little
Yeah.
bit what shifted with you with going to therapy, and then the understanding of what was going on with your emotions and so forth, and how did that help you?
Well, I think the most important thing that I experienced was that I just was able to cry my heart out, just sit there
Mm.
and cry, and that there was someone there who was able to bear that pain with me. Um, because I was so young, and as you said before, none of my friends had ever experienced such a loss. Nobody would
Mhm.
even have the capacity or the willingness maybe to just be there and open up to such a tragic um, loss and such a way of dealing with grief. And my way was crying, so people were feeling uncomfortable around me.
Mm.
So I really experienced that um, just through therapy. There is someone that is able to listen, and um, that those are just normal reactions to grief. Um, and so that's how I started to have more confidence in my grief, if I can say so, or just find my way to express it, and then also learn some tools how to deal with it on an everyday basis. Because a lot of the times I was just feeling overwhelmed by all of those feelings and my physical symptoms as well. But I learned how to how to deal with it and how to help myself when I needed it the most.
Mm. What were some of those physical symptoms that grief was showing up in your body?
Well, I oh my gosh, I had so many. Well, I can't eat any kind of dairy since my mom died. Then I
Interesting.
had an ear infection. I had an eye infection. Um, Basically, I'm a walking infection. It happened
Mm.
still to this day. I have that. And I had later this year, I had a very bad cough that everybody was thinking I had the virus. But
Mhm.
I've been coughing for at least 7 months straight, and it was so bad that I went to all kinds of doctors here, but nobody could find anything. Um, and that's very frustrating as well because you are in physical pain, but nobody is able to find the cause of it.
Mhm.
And that's
And
those are just examples. Yeah, sorry
those
to
some exam
interrupt you. Yeah.
No, 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 no. I'm the one interrupting. Please, this is your space. I'm the one that ends up interrupting, and then I'm like, oh, when I listen back, sometimes I'm like, oh, why did I interrupt the person? And then why did I talk so long in that part? Because this is
You're
your
good.
story, not mine. This is not my story. It's yours. I'm just
Thank
like
you.
I some, um in that aspect of the not finding what is what is wrong or the solution, because at least you have a feeling that is associated with an expression of your grief. Have
Mm,
you asked your therapist, or have you looked into other type of intuitive type of people, or that
mhm.
see health differently than just the traditional medicine as well, to see how they can help you kind of move that grief out of your system?
Yeah, I did, and I tried so many things, but ultimately I just ended up starting a new therapy. So I have two therapists,
Okay.
um, and
When one is not
yeah,
enough, get a second one. Well,
it's
you know
yeah,
what though? It's fine. You had two
yeah,
deaths. You had two deaths. You can have two therapists.
yeah. Oh yeah, I never thought about it that way. Thank you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I just and I think it's fine because I just try to find ways to survive. So I don't feel bad
Mhm.
about having two or three or whatever.
Whatever you need. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um,
Gather your army, gather it.
yeah, I was always so afraid of asking for help, and then
Mm,
to um to realize even that I needed um to get help. Even if I did, and it was my idea to look for therapy, I still struggled so much to really open up about what was going on and how I felt about it, because I still learned that whatever whatever happens to you, you just feel it on your own, and um,
mm.
and that's one big thing that grief taught me about myself. That I'm very open, but I still struggle to really open up. Um, yeah, I think that makes a difference.
So you're open in general in your life, but you right now, so that's something you've known in grief, but yet you're still struggling to be completely open and transparent with your emotions
Yeah.
about grief? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then is it by writing then poems, which is one of the things you do in your thoughts in your Instagram account, is that one of the ways that you are tapping into that openness of sharing your emotions about grief?
Yeah. And my Instagram started with me just posting images and writing something about how I was feeling or what I experienced. And then I don't know how it happened, but I just transitioned into writing poems. Um, and I think that's the nice thing about being creative, that you're able to
Mhm.
just change how you express your grief according to how you're feeling. Um, but yeah, writing really has helped me a lot to put my thoughts into words and then put it out there for other people to see that they're not alone in this.
And you are not. And the fact that also you get the feedback of knowing that you're not alone either, because
Yeah,
then you have
exactly.
these
Yeah.
people coming back to you and sharing, wow, yeah, like I can relate to that. And knowing that,
Mhm.
oh, wow, okay, somebody else feels that way. It's like, again, being that you couldn't find that necessarily in your family, you grieved the same way in terms of being able to share those emotions, to be able to find a community and of people that have similarities in how it is they express their grief has been part of your grief journey as well, of your
Mhm.
own
Yeah.
tools. That's wonderful. Would you be okay of reading maybe one of your poems?
Yeah, sure. Just let me
If because I was gonna
send
like I was
you.
gonna if not I would pull it up and read, but I think it would
Yeah.
be more beautiful listening it from you.
So
And did you write poetry before, by the way?
yeah, yeah.
Oh.
I've always been writing poems since I was, yeah, a little kid, I think. Um, but um, but I just I like to explore. I don't have much knowledge on how to do it, how to structure it. I just
Oh,
go
who
for it.
cares? Who
Yeah.
cares? I don't either. I would write poems and songs when
Yeah.
I was a kid. I don't know. Is it like a what is it? An eight, whatever the da da
Yeah,
da
I
da
don't
da
know.
da 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 da
Don't
da 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 da. I'm like, wait, no, this
yeah.
doesn't match. This doesn't go with that. Da 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 da
Yeah.
da 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 da
Yeah.
da.
But you're
It's
not able to say why, you just feel it, right?
you just feel it. Yeah, you just go and
Yeah.
like, oh, what it doesn't have to fit into anything. Because anyway, who makes, the parameters that have been set as to what it is that has to be, what a poem is, are still just parameters of a person that thought that this is what it is. But it's
Yeah.
constantly, you just even said creativity, expression of creativity is constantly evolving as to how it is you feel, right? About your
Mhm.
grief. Well, the same thing goes with in general the creative process, what the standards are of what art is, or what
Mm.
music is, what poetry is, what this, it's constantly changing because it's creative. So
Yeah, that's
no,
true.
yeah, so no, let's just yeah, it's a poem, that it's a
Yeah.
poem. We don't know what the metric system of it, but it's a poem.
It's a poem. I picked one that I wrote last week,
Okay.
and it goes like this. People die, and everything they've touched stays still for a moment, maybe for years. And sometimes we resist time and change just because we still hope they'll come back one day, just because we never wanted them to leave, just because hope is less destructive than the realization that they're gone. At least hope gives you something to look out for, a dream not yet consumed instead of devastating truth.
Mm.
That's it.
Oh, I have chills. So hope is what you hold on to the most.
Yeah,
What are some
I
of the
always,
things you hope for? Yeah, what are the things you hope for in life? What are some of these aspects of hope? How does it reflect in your life?
well, most of all, I just feel for some reason, even if I've seen that they died and I've seen how they've died, so I know that they're gone, I just still believe somewhere, somehow, that if I do everything right, if I'm just good enough, then they will come back. So it's this weird thing. I don't know what my brain is doing, but it's this weird thing that even if you see something, so it's real, you still wish to, yeah, just change it or to
Mm-hmm.
turn back time somehow.
Mm.
And so that's what I've been struggling the most, I think, to just understand that it happened is real and that I cannot change it, that I'm helpless in the face of death.
Mm. I'm right. It's you're helpless, yet at the same time, there are things you can do in terms of the grief. You're helpless in the face of death in terms of that's I can't say that. Inevitable, inevitable. There's some,
Inevitable.
it is always so hard. It's like every time there's certain words in English that
Oh,
based
I
on
have
how
that.
it is, like where you put the, and I mean, and I grew up with both again, I'm saying there's still like this thing of like inevit like those that have like that
Yeah.
inevit like I'm like, wait, why can't I say it? Because I inevitable. Okay, okay, whatever. I won't make this be an English lesson. But so things that are inevitable. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. Things that we cannot change.
Yeah.
things that, things that, so death is something that is there. There's no, I'm trying to use another word because I can't pronounce it. So, things that are, it's something we cannot change is fate, right? It's part of our life. Just like we're born, we're going to die. We are helpless in that aspect, that is a reality that we all face,
Mm,
right? In life. Yet at the same time, we do have some aspect of control into the how we navigate that reality,
yeah.
meaning how, like in your case, either holding on to hope, seeking tools of therapy, being able to talk it out, talking about your emotions, writing poetry, writing. So those are the things we have control is, and how maybe we choose to express how we feel about death of loved ones. Um, so gathering as many tools as we can into this toolbox, and I think we need an arsenal of a lot of different tools, because we never know which tool may help a certain part of our grief journey.
Yeah.
You just said, you have two therapists, and that's the tools you needed too, and that's absolutely
Mhm.
understandable. You have poems, you have Instagram. What other aspects, what other tools do you have? How about you? We mentioned then friends, of course, don't relate necessarily to your grief, but do you have some friends that are there for you, or have been there for you during this process in general, or do you feel that some of that also shifted?
I do have one very good friend who has always been there, and I feel that she has learned a lot from my grief journey as well as to how to be a friend or just to be there for me. Because of course that changed our relationship as well.
Mm,
But we made it. So
mhm,
and we're still here. But I did lose a lot of people, a lot of friends when my parents died because they were just not comfortable with just me grieving. Nobody
mm.
would know what to do with me. So that's mm,
No, no, no. I'm thinking about what you just
thing.
said, that
Yeah.
discomfort that people feel. You know what it is? I think sometimes I had this conversation yesterday about something else, actually completely. It was actually about how we're prejudiced in general about others,
Mm,
uh, and how in general that prejudice comes is from the like, okay, like for when you don't necessarily want to talk to somebody that maybe thinks differently or looks differently, because it may to some extent bring up something in you or a truth within you, of something that you have to face yourself. So it's that fear that blocks us sometimes into really getting to know somebody. So, so prejudice is based out of fear. So I feel that in grief, the fact that some people are uncomfortable or don't want to be around somebody that's experienced it is because it's a reality that's there in front of them, of that aspect of mortality,
Mm,
either of themselves or their loved ones around them, that they're not willing yet to see.
yeah.
um so maybe that distancing has not, a lot of times, I think, and a great majority of times, has nothing to do with you at all. It just has to do with the person not being okay to be open to that reality of
Mm.
their own mortality or the mortality of those around them. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. But it still makes me mad that
Hmm.
that people, or yeah, just people that you've loved as friends, or even relationships, um just decide to go silent for that reason, that they're
Hmm.
not making the effort to inform themselves about it, or
Yes.
because I mean, as a bystander, of course it's hard to witness somebody crying his heart out because of what they've been through, but you're not going it through yourself. So I'm always, it makes me so mad that it makes me want to scream at them in their face, like, don't you have no decency? um
Mm.
I think it's also our, um we have to learn more about grief, just because even this year with the virus, we've learned um, so much about what it means to grieve on
Hmm.
a worldwide scale, right?
Yes.
So what is it that holds us back to just Google, or to just ask that friend, I want to be there for you. I'm feeling very uncomfortable because it really sucks to go through something like this, but I want to be there. What can I do for you? Um,
Whoa, whoa, what you just said is just amazing. You just gave the listeners, if you have not, as a listener, if you have not experienced death yourself and you do not know what to do to support somebody around you that's grieving, what Olivia just said is key. Really say, like, it sucks. I have no clue what to do, but I want to be there. What do I do? Like, admit
yeah,
that you do not have that you do not know what to do and that it is you're uncomfortable about it, but at least say something. That is
yeah,
so true, Olivia. Like, so if your friends would have, like, just stepped up, maybe they will, maybe they'll
mhm.
listen to this podcast and now they'll know what to do. um just to be there, and because you may not need necessarily each one of them to be there to hear you cry. You may need one of them to be there to make you laugh, and another one to take you out shopping, and another one to,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Just be human. I don't know
Mm,
why we think that we have to have all the answers to something, and that if we don't have those answers, we are failing at something. It's normal to not understand something, to just not know. Um, but it really makes a difference if you are at least willing to open your heart to that kind of suffering, um, and to just be humble enough to learn from it. So I really had a problem with that. That people just didn't even want to try. So if I can give one piece of advice, is to just ask, just just be open about it. I mean, in the end, everything that you say is wrong, right? When you're talking
yes,
about grief, like, you never really
yes.
get it right, but at least you're trying. And if grieving people see that there is someone that is really trying hard to be there, um, even if it's hard to open up when you're in so much pain, eventually they will. So don't make it the grieving person's thing to have to come back at you, text you, ask for help, because they don't have the energy. They have to invest everything that they have and trying to survive. So don't don't ask them, or don't how do you say that? Don't make it be their thing that on top of
Mm,
everything else.
mm. That's even a great tip, even for myself, what you just said, because I sometimes do end up leaving it on the other person's table. I do reach out and I say, just know I'm here. Just tell me what it is you need. I'm here. But I do end up allowing that space at times because,
Mm,
as you even said, sometimes, and everybody's journey is very different, right? And the overwhelm, and especially when it's a death that somebody's just had. There's so much business. I always call it business. There's always a lot of business and stuff around the aspect of death, meaning burial planning, funeral, this, that, and then the home of the people that, if by chance it's a parent, then you sometimes have to deal with things that have to do with the home, selling the home or the things and so forth, that you want to sometimes allow that space, right?
mm,
But um but what you said too is true, that the energy that sometimes we are using as grieving, as grievers per se, is in that we don't sometimes have enough energy to even just reach out to somebody to let them know we need them. So thank you for expressing it that way, because it makes me be more proactive as a friend, to be sure I reach out more specifically to the
yeah.
people that are grieving around me. Thank you. What other things would you say are some of the biggest learnings that you've had? You mentioned that you learned that grief taught you to be open in life, right? That's what, but that
Mm.
that's one of the, what other things has grief or going through this experience taught you, either about yourself or about the world around you or life in general?
Well, about myself, I think the biggest lesson was that I needed to slow down, because
Mm,
I've learned that I need to keep going. I need to look for the next opportunity to um, just develop my personality further, do this, do that, be successful in life. But then when grief happens, when you lose someone like this, you start realizing what's really important. And to me, that was really to sit down and have a conversation with myself, and have it every day, actually, to just ask what what do I need really? Am I forcing myself to do stuff that I don't want to do just because I have to function? Or can I maybe take a break and just listen to my feelings? Because I think that in the early stages of grief, you really focus on that, on what you're feeling. There is nothing else. But then eventually, the everyday life comes back, and you have to pay your bills. You have to go back to work. There's maybe you have kids, so you have to take care for yeah, take care of
mm-hmm.
everybody else. So maybe you forget yourself in that process. And I don't have kids, but I still work, and I still have a life. So it's I don't want to forget about myself. And
Mm.
grief always takes me back. Anytime I just I just push myself too much, then it really drags me back to my seat, and I have that conversation again, where I ask I ask permission. I ask myself um, to just grieve, to just feel my feelings, and just leave the stuff that I wanted to do for that day somewhere else, and just focus on myself. Um, yeah,
So grief grounds you.
yeah,
Grief grounds you. Grief brings you back into the reality of the who you are, what you are, aside from all the busyness, because it kind of brings you back to the essence of who you are. Would that be
yeah.
the right way?
Hmm.
It's so true. It's so true. I'm like thinking of it as like in my own life, it does resonate with me. I had never thought of it that way, that it just kind of just connects me again with my reality, with my essence.
Hmm.
There's a
That-
humbling component of it too, right? Like this,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I forgot what I was going to say. But I think, yeah, I think that's what scares me the most about grief, or not about grief, but just about life, that it keeps going. And I never, after my parents died, I didn't want to go on. I always thought, um, time has to stand still. I have to do everything that I can to keep remembering them, and that means that for me, life cannot go on, because if I do go on, then I forget about them.
Mm.
Um, and that's really something that scares me to this day. Um, but listening to myself really gives me the opportunity to realize that grief is not going anywhere, and so my parents are not going anywhere. That even if I do work, even if I do um, go on, if you want to say so, they are never gone, because they yeah, in some way they live on within you, and even if that's not enough, um, that's what we have to get used to when you lose someone.
You just answered your own question of the hope,
Hmm.
because you
That's
mentioned
true.
you just answered your own hope right there, of the fact that you're hoping that they'd come back, and you just answered it. I'm kidding. You just
Yeah.
answered it. You just
Yeah,
answered
that's
it, Olivia.
true.
They're with you all the time, because that grief is there constantly with you. They haven't gone
Constantly.
anywhere.
Yeah. I don't know why that fear of losing, of constantly losing, even if you have already lost, um,
Hmm.
comes from. It's
Because
just
it's so
very
painful.
interesting.
It's so painful still. It's still
Mm.
painful. It doesn't mean that because we've gone through it, it doesn't mean that we're like, oh my gosh, let me go through it again. No.
It was
It
such a
doesn't.
nice ride. Let it. Let's
No,
do it again.
no, no, no. Yeah. It's like, okay, it's kind of like a little bit, it would be a little bit, it's kinda like going on a really scary roller coaster ride, and there
Mm.
is a part of us maybe that we're masochists and we're like, "Let me go on it again and feel that thrill," you know? But, but if you fell off of the roller coaster, you wouldn't wanna go back on there, right? But in
Yeah.
that case, yeah, it's true. It's like regardless of whether we realize, like, yes, I actually am stronger than I thought I was, and I survived this really traumatic and horrible experience of having both my parents die within a period of 2 years. It's not like, oh, let's see, what's next? What's next? Let me see. You goody, 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 goody. Bring it to me.
Mm.
No.
Mm. Yeah.
We don't, it's not that we wish that upon ourselves or upon others at all. It's just the fact that we already know that if it were to come, and it will come, because again, life is about these, you know, realities, that we are a little more prepared because we've already gone through it again, and we know that, wait a minute, I survived that, I can survive anything else that comes my way as well. So but it's not like we're looking forward to it. I'm definitely
Mm.
not. I'm definitely not.
Yeah.
Mm.
But also I think that part of why I'm so afraid of letting that go is because I just associate so much of my parents to their last moments, their last year. So
Mm.
I that's why I think if I let go of that, then where are my parents? Where do they go?
Mm.
But
If you let go of, you mean that memory of their
yeah,
actual uh,
yeah, of
okay.
how traumatic that was. And
Okay.
I think that's a very important thing in therapy, that you learn to connect to your parents on a different way, just by
Yeah.
remembering the good things that you've been through 20 years before they died. Um, and then eventually you realize that they're not gone if you let go of that trauma that you have. But it's a
Hmm.
long road. It's not that you just go there once and then you're done. You just I think I'll keep doing it for the rest of my life. So,
Well, yeah, you'll if not, you'll gather against some of those tools and then learn how to navigate it. Like
hmm
once you get what you need, and then you can kind of it's cyclical, right? So you might need therapy at this moment, then you might be good with whatever you've kind of learned and you kind of use those tools and maybe something else comes up later on, then you go again. I went to a therapist once, and she was like, "My goal is to not have lifelong patients. My goal
mm
is for my patients to just be with me for a period of time. That's my goal. I don't want them to be dependent on me." And because it's the aspect of like, because that's how she felt her job was done, that she had given
mm
her patients enough resources to kind of work through whatever they were working through in that moment, and then later on coming, back if something else kind of reoccurs. But that was her goal as a therapist, at least.
mm
um so yours is still very recent, so you're still navigating through that. So of course you right now feel like this is my lifeboat, kind of, this is what I need
Yeah,
right now, and that's absolutely true for now, right? It doesn't necessarily mean
yeah,
it's your
yeah,
truth
sure.
tomorrow, or a year from now. It could change. Our truth and our necessities change. Wow, I've learned so much from you today, Olivia.
Thank
So
you,
much
Kendra.
from
Thank
you.
you so much.
I really have, and I appreciate you taking the time after your work day to come and chat here and share this journey and teach me as well as the listeners these different perspectives, and I am grateful. Now tell the listeners, and I'll put it in the show notes, how they can get in touch with you. Is it you're on Instagram? What's the best way? And again, I'll link it down below.
Well, I mainly use my Instagram. I do have an email as well, but I'm more comfortable with sharing my Instagram. It's the Big Grief. Um, yeah. Uh,
The Big Grief. If you want to
the
read all these poems and your thoughts about grief, and sometimes these Instagram lives that you might do, or sharing your story with others. Was Patricia's the first time that you shared it,
Yeah,
when
that
you
was
shared on
actually
hers
my first live. Yeah.
live? Is your first live ever on Instagram was that
Ever,
one?
yeah.
An interview, imagine, about your grief was your first live. Is this your first podcast?
Yeah, yeah.
It is your first podcast. Well, you did amazing.
Thank you, thank you. And
You did amazing.
I
So the Big Grief on Instagram.
yeah, but I also wanted to say that I put a lot of stuff out there with all my writings, but my DMs are always open if people want to share, to talk about the ones that they've lost. Um, it's important to just, at least to me, to just be there and listen, give something back to people.
hmm Yes, and then you have a way. Is it true? You also have like Is it like affirmation or ways in which? Let me see, because I thought I saw a link on your account. Isn't there a way of also purchasing your
Oh,
cards
yeah.
too? Your
I forgot
postcards?
about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I also, I so I make postcards out of my posts because I thought that that's a very nice and authentic way to just connect with grieving people in your everyday life,
Mm,
which is something that we lack, me myself as well. Because I just write on my Instagram, but then I am not really able to talk about it in person to somebody that I might know because I still feel that
mhm.
kind of weird, uncomfortable feeling. So I created my postcards to just do that. And there is a link. You're right, Kendra. There's a link in my
In your Instagram, yeah.
Instagram.
So in
Yeah,
your
where you
link tree,
can.
you can link, yeah, to
Yeah,
find the Etsy shop. And if by chance somebody doesn't have Instagram, then you can find it. It's called Postcard When the Ones You Love Die. You can search it that way, I guess, on Etsy, or the Big Grief Prints, actually. The
yeah,
Big Grief
yeah.
Prints on Etsy. If by chance you don't have Instagram, you can go there and find these postcards for for your beautiful words and poems, and it's a way of you being able to share with somebody else your thoughts. Thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that I might have not asked? And I know we didn't go too much into detail after your
Mm.
dad's passing, but I hope that you could probably come back. You could come back.
Yeah.
You can come back. We can
Yeah, I will come back. Let's do it that way.
you can and we can talk more about all these different things and all your learnings, because again, it's grief is a journey.
Yeah.
There's not a start point or an end point at all. So
Yeah.
we can always have
Wha-
a conversation about it.
One last thing that I wanted to say is just to thank you for the opportunity to talk about it and for inviting me to my first podcast.
I'm so grateful that you accepted, and I am again very grateful for the insights that you brought to me at least in this conversation. So thank you, Olivia.
Thank you.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.